So it is March 12th, and we will start, I believe, we'll start our meeting. We'll go through some things and in hopes that John is able to join us before we get to some of the bigger discussion stuff. But, so first, there were a few changes that I caught later on the February minutes. It just had to do with spelling. And so Jenny is EY and Ruthie is EU. There we go.
I got it for this one.
And otherwise, do people have any questions or other comments about the minutes from February? No. All right. Do people approve the February minutes?
Yes.
Yes.
And the second thing is the courtesy boat inspection piece, which John is well aware of too. So we've met with the select board to talk about budget for the courtesy boat inspection. Just as a review, we have the courtesy boat inspection's been, the town has paid for that $7,500 for a number of years. I didn't go back to see how far back we've been paying, but it's been the same amount for years. And that has been to cover 3 boat launches with a courtesy boat inspector. 2 people are hired, and they're hired through the CRLA also through a number of years. So we usually contract with the CRLA to do the training of them, have the supervision of them. The state does some supervising of any plants that they find. And so they are, the CRLA this year had their executive director step down, and so they were without sort of a director until they just recently, they hired somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And so they just hired him, I believe, last week.
Wow.
And a very qualified woman that they're very excited about. So,
Is it public yet?
I'm sorry?
Is it public yet?
It is now.
If I understand, it's a seasonal full-time?
It is seasonal full-time. I believe that I know that they have, when I say they hired her, they interviewed her, they gave her the position, and as far as I know, she accepted it, and they're just doing the, it's sort of like the in-between stuff, so it sounds like it's fairly official.
Okay.
And I don't know when she actually starts, but I wrote her a letter welcoming her, and she said she's anxious to get to work with us.
Yeah.
So,
That person's name?
I'm sorry, Karen.
Oh. Would she be interested in attending one of our meetings?
She said she'd be interested in getting to working with the Conservation Commission. So
Is she local?
I don't know too much about her. I read a little bit about her, but I don't know the details about her. But some of her background, she has a lot of, what the questions I asked was, does she have background working with young people? She have financial, is she good at dealing with budgets? Is she have conservation issues and everything? She's sort of like a fairly well-rounded for the kind of person that they're going to need. And can she, the big thing was, can she handle like a full-time summer kind of seasonal position? But sounds good. And so, yes, I think we would, that's a good question, is just at some point, once they start to she gets her feet on the ground, we want to talk about how we want to work with CRLA if the town will be hiring, not hiring, contracting with them to do the courtesy boat inspection. We'll be working with how much it's going to cost. And so at this point, we have, I talked to Aaron about working and getting Windsor and the 3 Mile Pond Association to contribute to it also. And so we're trying to meet with Windsor Select Board, and unfortunately they were meeting tonight. And so, and they'll be meeting, they meet every other week. So we're going to try to meet with them specifically, first to talk about the courtesy boat inspection and inviting them to join us in supporting that, since they have 3 Mile Pond in their our watershed, the whole watershed area. So So that's,
So, the 16,000 that we requested,
so sorry, that was, so we asked the select board to approve, or not to approve, because they don't do the approval, but we recommended that they put in 16,000 into the budget for the, on the, that they recommend this 16,000. Anyway, there was a discussion, and Becky was there, sorry. This is, oh, that's John. Hey, John, you're online, what's up?
So, are we doing a Zoom meeting? Is that what
Yeah.
we're doing?
No, we're at the library.
Oh, okay. I'm in the city. I'll be right there.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
he didn't get the message.
I did, I talked to him today, but I think he was kind of distracted.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
So he'll be here. But, so there was, trying to think of who it was. Who else was there? At the select board. So we talked about what I think, it was Aaron who said that, well, we have it looks like it's probably about 38,000 maybe to run the program, we're not really sure. And because there was some grants that we think probably were also being used to pay for some of it, but we're not sure about how much that was.
Aaron said this?
No, this is, so I'm sorry, CRLA
Yeah.
went through all their records, and some of the records were difficult to follow, how the money flowed. But they did, and so they had, CRLA said they thought it was about, the people who are on the board now say they think about $38,000 it cost for the program. Some grants were applied towards it, and China, the town of China and the China Lake Association contribute to it in a substantial way. And I can't tell you what the breakdown is of that, but so we had asked for that, and what they said was that they were willing to approve up to $10,000.
Who's they?
The select board
Vassalboro.
of Vassalboro, so that they would approve $10,000 of going towards the
Boat inspection.
To
So
put
we
it
asked
on
for
the ballot.
16,000 and they're willing to do 10. That's the bottom line?
yeah.
Okay.
Well, they said up to 10,000.
Up to 10,000.
The other possibility is that if it costs more than that, is that we could look at putting some of the Alewife funds towards something above that. So we could start using that. And that's going to be number 6 on our agenda, but we'll talk more.
So is it valid for me to put in the notes that although we
town-
recommended 16,000, the town is willing?
The town's going to put in that they recommend 10,000, I think. And we'll have to decide whether or not we continue to put in for the 16,000 already.
Was there any discussion about what we talked about last time, funding only 2 of the lakes, since we have no vested interest in China? And what role
We do.
Kennebec Water District is financially paying for this?
So the 38,000, since we've only been paying 7,000 of it, in the past, it looks as if we have always been mostly just paying for our Weber Pond and the 3 Mile Pond. And the Weber Pond Association has been giving, I think, $1,000 towards this also. So they've been helping with some of that part of it. So I think that, yes, in the past, that's what, and that's why we're not doing, even though we have 3 boat landings, we're really not looking at, hey, John,
Sorry.
welcome. No.
I made a grand entrance into the select board meeting.
Oh,
Or
no.
planning board,
Planning board.
and I thought it was, and then, so Peggy Schaefer is,
You're online too.
oh, so I thought it was Peggy Schaefer over there. I thought, no, it was Jenny, because they're twins. Well, hi, Laura.
So we're just talking about the courtesy boat inspection. And so we're just clarifying, we had requested 16,000 from the select board, and they had said that they would do 10,000, and that was to be put on the warrant, right?
That was my understanding, is
Yeah.
it's 10,000.
And so that's to be put on the warrant. There was some discussion about if there was, that in the future or now, if there's, that we could come to them and talk to them about taking money out of the Alewife fund too. So, and that's a kind of a longer discussion or a later discussion maybe.
Do I put that in the notes?
I can't remember how it went. I'd want to look at what the select board's minutes said, which we won't see for another
Okay.
3 weeks.
So.
The recording's online.
The other.
Well, but it's the recording, but it doesn't say what the minutes are, that's the problem. So what they actually minuted that they would do.
And those are not on, I did look.
And so they didn't minute I know they didn't minute because they didn't vote on it. They didn't minute about what to do otherwise, they just said 10,000, that they would recommend up to 10,000.
So, I think that's probably gonna work, but have you gotten talked about the CRLA yet?
No, we're only on
Okay.
number 2, courtesy boat inspection.
Okay.
We'll do number 3 in a minute.
Okay, well, because that affects the courtesy boat inspections, that's why. So I'm not sure where you want
This
to.
budget, this budget's courtesy boat inspection
Yeah.
or next year?
No, this budget year,
Okay.
and that's still being somewhat negotiated, but we have a new executive director who's just.
Yeah, we just learned about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe you can tell us her name because I couldn't remember.
Jessica, give me a minute. I can't,
Okay.
I'm like,
Maybe.
feel like I'm in a swamp right now. I just can't keep up where I am. Hold on, I'll get it in a second.
That's okay, we can get that later.
Yeah.
So you
So,
were,
just so you know, we don't have a CLRA update
see,
on the agenda. Should I just put it all under vote?
it's under Weber Pond Water Quality
Okay.
is what that's
Okay.
what it's gonna be
Okay.
under. So,
Just trying to pigeonhole the right place.
yeah. This one's called the Courtesy Boat Inspection Program.
Right.
Update. So we think that John, it was 10, so that was a decision, basically, and that will go on a warrant. That's what's gonna go on the warrant, correct?
I think so, but I gather from Aaron, there's still some stuff up in the air, because we've talked about what should be coming out, what we would like to have out of Alewife money, which is primarily directly affected with water quality, and that's testing equipment and test process. Every time we run a test, like phosphorus or something like that, we get charged for it from the state. So we have to.
Meaning the town?
Yeah,
Or WPA.
WPA does.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so that's what we're trying to get straightened out. And also right now in this budget cycle, it's like juggling between, Aaron calls me, what is he calling me about? And we kind of wander around looking at different things, well, okay, I'm ordering this test piece equipment for you, it comes out last year's stuff. And so it gets a little confusing about where we are. I also have a lot of players involved right now.
Well, we're just talking about the
Okay.
courtesy boat inspection
But
piece
that
of it.
involves a courtesy boat inspection, which gets very confusing about how we're gonna manage it. It is gonna be done through the through the CRLA. It's just Jessica McDougal, I believe.
And we were wondering if it was official.
Yes, it is official. She's all-
MCDU.
I'm looking.
DOUGALL? Is it two L's?
Jessie May, not Jessica, Jessie, JESSIEMAE, McDougal, MAC, DOUGALL.
Two L's. So the question that, what they were wondering about taking some of the money from the Alewife. So that was the only thing, as far as at the town level, that I understood that, they said, well, we'll do the 10,000, but that it may be that some of this may come, the courtesy boat inspection piece of it could come out of the Alewives, but that wasn't a decision that was made there.
Part of it, Kennebec Water District is said they would put up, they have budgeted $10,000 for the courtesy boat inspection.
For the China Lake.
No, for just into the CRLA to handle,
Oh.
to fund courtesy. It has not been approved yet because they have a board meeting coming up in 2 weeks, which I'll go to. And Aaron and I are going, and Becky.
And I might want to go too.
And you might go, that's right, I did see it. So that's on, I believe that's on the agenda. So if they kick in 10, we put in, and the town of Vassalboro, which has the most sites, puts in 10, and the balance will come through from China or from China.
But there's still, this is all just for CBI?
Yeah,
Yes.
And then, but we're still working with trying to get 3 Mile Pond and Windsor to contribute?
yes.
Well, they already do, so Weber Pond contributes 1,000, is it? Is that what they've been contributing to
Web-
the CRLA?
We put in $1,500, I think it's $1,500. There's association dues, so Weber Pond Association, 3 Mile Pond Association, and the China Lake Association put in, I think it's about $1,500, maybe $1,200, I can't tell you right now.
Total or each?
Each. But that's for the operation of that's not for the courtesy boat inspections.
That's for everything for CRLA. That's
Yeah.
the dues for being.
All right, because now I'm getting confused in here when we're talking CBI and when we're talking CLRA. And
Well-
I don't know if I need to make the distinction in the notes.
No, and I understand that. It's been confusing to us too. CBI was run by
Right, CLRA, right.
It will probably still be run by the
Right.
CRLA.
But they're doing other things as well.
Yes, well, the key piece that everybody's most concerned about at this point in time is the CBI.
Right.
They also have, there is a small amount of money that China is putting up for doing shoreline work, the Conservation Corps. We're not participating in that at this moment, so.
So the CBI stuff, so there'll be $10,000 coming from, that Kennebec Water District has put towards CRLA.
Yeah.
That can go towards the CBI, because that's their priority too.
I mean, they're more concerned about anything than having milfoil get loose, because, that's an issue. We have no milfoil within our 2 watersheds so far.
So the CBI, so that, there isn't anything, at this point, where there will be something in the warrant for Vassalboro. It's not clear what it is, and they're gonna have to they have to decide by May when they print the thing.
Yeah,
And then whether or not, and it could be the select board could change also how much that they would do.
so, Mary Schwanke and Becky, Lammy and I will be meeting with the select board on the 21st. And we'll probably also have a Zoom participant,
So that's the Weber Pond Association's gonna meet with
the
the
select
select
board.
board concerning basically all these, some of
All these pieces,
everything.
water quality, the whole bit.
Certainly. So just to finish up on the courtesy boat inspection program, what we know at this point is that the town has committed $10,000 and that the Kennebec Water District's committed $10,000 towards at least the CRLA. And the CRLA is looking at developing a program, which in our last meeting, they hadn't done that yet. So that's the basic stuff. And that's their
How
priority.
much, Holly, was the CBI?
It was,
Total about-
they thought it was at 38,000.
I just put
but that
about
was-
40,000 in.
It is.
That's what-
And that's the time you get the insurance, there's a motor vehicle involved, there's, and plus the whole processing, payroll and everything else. And we're guessing at some of that because the books are in terrible shape.
So we will, so is there anything else that we need on that? Because there's,
No, it all doesn't add up here, but I don't think it matters. So that's okay, that's okay.
because China, probably the town of China is going to take.
Yeah, and China Lake Association's gonna add some, so it doesn't have to
Yeah.
add up, it's just fine in here.
But for us, it's the,
Scott Pierce made the comment at the last CRLA board meeting, he said, my expectation would be 7,500 from town of Vassalboro. And we said, where'd you come that from? And we never heard how, so Becky and I started really trying to figure out how to do this. And that's, so I'm $10,000 is the last number I heard from Vassalboro.
Yeah.
And also, and the water district is upped its donation. It was like 7,500 and went up to 10,000 this year.
I would just note they're the biggest stakeholder
Yeah, actually, you're right, they are.
Yeah.
compared
Yeah.
to especially Vassalboro.
Yeah.
Well, and China really is a big
Yeah,
stakeholder. The
exactly.
two of them are the biggest.
But their whole business is
Right.
the
Yeah.
quality of China Lake.
So so anything else on courtesy boat inspection piece of it? And then let's move over to the Weber Pond Water Quality Management Plan grant.
First, I'm going to give you a review of Weber Pond Water Level and Water Quality Review, which talks about what happened in 2023. It's a ton of data, so you don't have
Is
to.
this different from what was given last June? Because it's more
Oh,
updated.
this is 20, yeah, this is.
What's the date on this?
2023, it's right now.
Well, this
I
is
mean, it's
2024.
finished at the end of the year.
So this is all of 2023?
Yeah,
Okay.
right. Yeah, so you can,
Obviously, I'm not going to read it right now.
and if you want a hard copy, if you want to attach it, I can do that. No, don't, but I thought you'd be interested in seeing what it looks like.
Is this something that's public information?
Yeah,
Okay, so what
yeah,
we
we're
can,
going, actually, it will go out to this form or condensed form that's in a simple reading form will go to the select board. We have pre-reading for the select board to look
right,
at.
so
before we
what
go.
I'd like to do is to have, if you could send this to me or to Peggy, so that
Okay.
this can be an attachment that we can attach so
Yeah.
that other people can click on it and look at it too.
So, with this in mind, we're faced with a number of issues that all float around to everything from cyanobacteria, which everybody calls algae, but it's bacteria, and its impact, and the mycotoxins and antitoxins that are created when they die. And and it all lean toward the whole water quality issue. So now we're looking at how do we address this. One thing we started on a year ago with Main Rivers was to do something about getting the dam easier to operate. So even this winter, we have manipulated the dam. We've lowered it down to keep the water down so it doesn't erode the shoreline. And then we started worrying about, okay, we got to get the water back up. We have literally been taking boards out and we're adding boards, manipulating a dam. So we have a grant, we have an engineering grant which has now been granted to Main Rivers to redesign the dam and the fishway.
So American Rivers has a grant to redesign?
No, Main Rivers.
Oh, Main Rivers has a grant to redesign the Weber Pond Dam
Right,
Okay.
and Fishway.
at Fishway.
The original contract came out, which Weber Pond Association has to sign, and the town of Vassalboro has to sign. So, Aaron will do it. I saw our agreement, and we had some feedback, which they didn't have a problem with, so they have to redo it for my board to approve it. So that's the first step for us. That's the redesigning the dam, and it's a tool for us to flush the dam and do other manipulation of that. Second piece is that the last time the watershed had been surveyed, a watershed report had been done, was in 2003 in that time period. They're only valid for 10 years.
We discussed this, I think, last month.
Okay, so one of the things is to get a grant to do that. So Mary Schwanke in particular, David, and I don't know who else have been involved, have been getting coached by
Jenny.
Jenny, have been getting coached by some people that are contract or they work for DEP.
Coach to do what? Write the grant?
Write the grants,
Okay.
how to do it. And they have been looking at, to me, and I'm gonna pass this out.
And where is this grant from?
It would be, I don't know where they're actually, some of them come from USDA, some of them come through some other types of federal level. I don't know where they're from. I haven't,
Okay.
because I haven't been involved in it. I've got the notes for them. So, but our concern, and I'll let you see this, and you can have it, is the Weber Pond watershed, which is what the last report was on, which was done in 2003. And that includes Vassalboro, China, Windsor, and actually a piece of Augusta, and the 3/4 pond and Mud Pond, and 3 Mile. The team who has been talking with Alex Wong and Jen Jesperson, were coaching them and trying to help them figure out the grants, came back last week and said it's too big to go for a grant for the whole enchilada.
What do you mean enchilada?
The whole Weber Pond watershed. And that we should only do the watershed for Weber Pond. I pushed back and said, I
We should
don't,
only do.
Who recommended that?
Wait. We should only do,
the Weber Pond.
Watershed.
well, this
Not-
is Weber Pond
No,
watershed.
just Weber Pond. In other words, to start doing the 605B grant just for Weber Pond.
And
Because
where would that cutoff be?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I don't know, because
Who recommended this?
Alex Wong and I think Jen Jesperson, they're with DEP,
Oh, Alex Wong isn't he Kennebec County Soil and Water?
or maybe he is, I don't know.
He's Kennebec County Soil and Water, and I
So
think
they
Jen is
thought
the
it was
other one.
too big to go after. They think it's important, but they also think that Weber ought to get started first. Because we get such a high volume of water and percentage of phosphorus from 3 Mile, I'm saying, let's go back and revisit that. So I don't know if there's any decision. I understand they're afraid of timing, that it takes 2 years to get some of this stuff through, to get to a point you can do a 319 grant, which is
So
execution.
that's what we're trying, this is a 319
No,
grant?
this is a 605B grant.
605B, which is the first
The
step.
plan.
The plan.
Oh, okay.
This is to pay for the watershed, the Weber Pond watershed plan.
So, like you, I look at it and say, okay, what is, to me, Weber Pond is affected by everything else there, so we should do all. So that's still up in the air. And now that Mary Schwanke is headed to Uruguay for 2 weeks, nothing's gonna happen too much on that space, so I can't tell you any more than that, other than the fact that we know that's going to incorporate a large amount of data gathering, which the Weber Pond Association is ramping up to do now. We're going to do.
I don't mean to be quip or anything, but is there any new information from the last meeting we had? I mean, it seems to me this is where we were last month, that there was a grant in the making.
Yeah.
So nothing new has really happened.
Other than, Peggy, other than saying, we think it's too big.
Oh, and we is who?
No.
That's Alex Wong and
Who
Jen
is?
Jesperson.
He's
Who
the
is-
Kennebec County
Yeah.
Soil and Water District person,
Okay.
head of that or something.
Yeah.
Or at least he's the person who's been helping with the grant. He's the,
And Jen Jesperson is a contractor to DEP and maybe to them too. She's got her own ecological company.
yeah.
So it's,
So there was a meeting, there was a big meeting between the people who are trying to write the grant, which is this Mary and David, different strategies about how to go about it. Because the way it has to flow is that you first have to get money. You can't get any money to do any kind of projects until you have a plan.
Right, yeah, I
And
know
we
all
have a
that.
plan.
Yeah.
I
Okay, yeah.
mean, we keep repeating
Right.
that.
But, so what they did is that there's a bunch of strategies about, sometimes you can apply for these grants at the same time.
Yeah, I'm aware of all that. I was just trying to pick up what was different from last month.
Well, the fact that they've been meeting, I can't,
Okay.
yeah, that's,
Okay.
I mean, they've
So I-
clearly been working on it, but, and that's, the last thing out of it was, it's too big a project to go after one. And I have to disagree with them, it's a big project, but because there are so much linkages, you gotta include 3 Mile. You just gotta
Right.
do that.
Yeah, maybe not include three-cornered or mud, but
Yeah,
I,
but, so that's really where, now, in the process, in the last 2 weeks, so half the time, either, we've actually been able to engage 3 Mile into setting them up to start applying to get somebody that's certified to do Secchi disc. And to start doing testing now,
3 Mile Pond Association.
yeah.
so the WPA has been working with you?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, in fact, we're gonna help them set buoys and set, do a variety of things. And we're actually gonna use that, so the town paid for some of our test equipment. We're gonna use that test equipment on 3 Mile too. And I've got volunteers to do that. So in this 4-week period, so we have one group working on the grants, and the other group has been working on developing a relationship with 3 Mile. And that to me is really, that's significant that it hasn't happened where we actually been, and they've got volunteers lined up and all this stuff. I have a boat from, on Weber, which has been committed and will have the proper GPS and sounding gear so we can set the correct buoys and all that stuff. We're getting all them lined up right now. So that's all the further I can tell you right now. It's a lot of work right now, but it's for a small group.
And so who will get billed for this? You said that it costs money to be tested.
I don't know, but it's $45 to run a phosphor test. We do our own phosphorus test, but it's not certifiable by the state. So they take it to a lab, HTL or something like that. It's a state lab. And the state lab charges somebody $45 every time you do a test.
So-
I've never written a check to them, so I don't know who's paying for it, but that's what I was told, is $45.
Could they be absorbing it? Because I've never heard that the town's paid it.
I ain't either. I don't know how it's being absorbed, but I know that it's.
But there's a cost involved with that.
Yeah.
So the Weber Pond Association is going to provide the training for the 3 Mile Pond volunteers to do testing. They'll provide the boat, they'll provide the equipment, and somebody will get charged for this when it goes to the state to be verified.
Yeah, and so the one thing we've done to cut the verification, the cost down on that, is that we have a way of doing the phosphorus test that's not certifiable, but it's like, oh, we've got a peak, let's test the water. So, I mean, but then if we get a peak that's over a certain change,
A peak in phosphorus?
yeah, then
Okay.
we'll take the sample into the lab and the state will certify it. But it takes sometimes 2 weeks to get that information back. We can manipulate the dam. If we see a peak going up, then we see the phosphorus levels go up, we can actually open the dam up. And by the time the state gets back to us and goes, no. But it's a small lab. The state lab is not real big. And we've spent time being trained also in the lab so that they're trying to certify us to use some of the equipment. So we become the volunteers of the state when we certify our results.
So here's the problem, that if Alex, so the meeting that they had to do with looking at all the different ways of going about and approaching this. You know, are we going to do the entire watershed? We'll start with the plan, and then later on, once we get the plan approved, then we'll go for the other stuff. Or are we going to apply for both the 605B and the 319 at the same time? Because they said that one of them comes in sooner and the other one would be waiting on anyway, so we might as well apply for them both at the same time. But the problem is if they only want us to do Weber Pond, then that's not going to involve 3 Mile Pond, and we want to start working together with the town of Windsor. We want to work with the 3 Mile Pond people, and so it really doesn't make sense for us not to have a plan in place, at least, because the other thing is then, when the last time that we had this plan, the one that was from 2005 to 2015 or something like that.
Right.
That was the people, when you look at who it was who had, and it was a $2 million, the plan to institute it, whatever, to, would be, implement, that's the word, to implement it would be $2 million. We only spent, was it, do you remember that number? It was like 200,000 or something, it was some small amount. And so of course it didn't do what it was supposed to do because there wasn't money there. And they looked at also why it was that there was problems with, why did they have problems with getting, to get it implemented. And some of the things when they did sort of their after the fact evaluation was that it's really hard to get landowners on board, educated about the need for this, because the landowners, part of it is probably half of the funding. The funding for the implementation is a 50-50 usually.
Mhm.
And that means that the landowners or the town or somebody's going to have to come up with 50%. And when you're dealing with landowner land, usually you have to get them to say, okay, we will do through these youth conservation corps or whatever, we will do the other 50%, we'll do that, but you have to put up this other. And they had a hard time with getting some people. And so when you look at who it was who had it done, there was more on 3 Mile Pond that had some of these measures done than there was on Weber Pond, even though 3 Mile Pond is, sort of, it's a third of the problem in Weber Pond, but it's, and so that's one of the things they have to do is there's a lot of individual education of landowners about, why does this make a difference?
So, last summer, raised some significant flags for people around the pond.
Good.
Yeah,
And so
right.
people are more on board now than they were back
Oh,
in 2015.
they got really excited this week because when the ice went out, the water was green. And we tested it. It wasn't cyanobacteria, but it was green,
No,
and then
it's
all the
green.
rain, even China Lake was murky and thick. So it's clear. It's clear now, just clear in the last day. So, but yeah, people, you're right, and that's the biggest issue is how do we handle, or how do the municipalities handle, private roads? And that's all private roads almost around everything. And by the way, I used the last time we talked about 3 Mile, about that strip that was in Windsor. I've used that as an example. Actually, I think there's somebody's flying a drone around it the next week or so to get pictures of it.
You mean, it was actually, it was on Windsor territory, the one that had
That's part of
the
it.
code?
Well, no, there's been code violations both in China and Windsor.
Okay.
The other piece is that nobody had ever talked to Teresa Haskell. And so
She's
who
the-
is she?
she's the town manager in Windsor. Turns out that Aaron knows her very well and said, I'll call her. And so I was supposed to go tonight.
Just be aware.
Yeah, but we weren't able to go because they're working on school budget, and it was just like,
Right, so we've been, we're trying to get, what we've done is we want to, one of the plans for both for the courtesy boat inspection and the Weber Pond water quality plan is that we want to have, the whole long-term thing is to have all of us be working together. So
Right.
You brought up Canopy Water District, the Town of China, the China Lake Association, as well as all the lake associations and all the towns involved, which is really we want to have. There's some amount that Augusta would need to be involved with at Three Corner, and they were involved in the other plan, the 2005 to 15 plan. They were involved, but to a lesser extent. But Windsor was involved at that time, and so was the Town of China. And so we want to go back to that, having us all communicating on what's going on. And so Erin has already talked to the town manager at Windsor and has her on board for at least, for understanding these two issues that we're going to be coming to her for. And we're dividing the two things as courtesy boat inspection, asking them to step up for the courtesy boat inspection costs. And then we'll also be wanting to get them on board for the Weber Pond, the management plan. So we're going to first try to meet with the select board and her as soon as we can. And I think we're going to look at doing that next in 2 weeks when they meet
26
again.
or something like
Because they're
that,
meeting
last thing.
tonight and we couldn't, and so we're going to try to meet in 2 weeks And it'll be some combination. We want one person from the CRLA who lives in Vassalboro, so it'll either be John or Becky, and then myself on Conservation Commission, and we'd like to have Aaron there too.
And I think Tom Whitaker was the president.
But he's not from Vassalboro, but yes.
Nobody said 3 Mile Pond, though.
Oh, yeah, so
He's in China,
we've
so-
invited him, and he wasn't able to come tonight either.
Yeah.
And so that's why we're putting it off. So we're going to try to have them all show up and start to work with, so that
We're doing what, we're trying to do what had been attempted before, and then it just kind of disappeared. And I'm happy about it. It's a lot of work trying to get a lot of moving pieces, try to do it. But we also are now seeing a lot more volunteers are willing to help do things, which is quite refreshing too. With all of it.
So as far as the plan, what we're going to do at this point is that we're going to be meeting, so some combination of VCC and CRLA board members, the Weber Pond Association people, and Aaron will be meeting with both the Kennebec Water District people to sort of start to keep conversations going there, and with the Windsor town officials, and see what goes from there. Concerns or questions that?
It's exciting.
What's really exciting is the amount of energy that, there's been a lot of the amount of energy that's been generated by people have really stepped up to writing these grants, which is huge, and they are fairly, they seem fairly sophisticated in their ability to write the grants, but also not just that part, but then the support they have of the people who are gathering the data are very, they've gone through some of these old grants, and they've gone through all of the watershed plan, and they're looking at how to incorporate some of what happened then into this, and they're going to be using a lot of that information in this. And so it seems very, and they're getting that support from both the DEP people and the Kennebec County Soil and Water Conservation District. So that's very hopeful. And I think that the part that we need to play is, while they're working on that, is I think that these kinds of things that's why I want to get them up online and have them in our minutes so that people can look at them. Anybody can be referred to them and say, here's the last, the 2023 Weber Pond water level and water quality review, and that people can review that from just clicking on in our minutes. Is there anything else that we need to make a decision about around the water quality?
No, I have some more. I have one more piece to share
Yeah.
with you. This will give you an idea of where the phosphorus comes from, and this is out of there's 2 of them right there. This actually came from when they did the last watershed thing, but it's,
So what's the date on this?
I think this is back 2003 or 2001, something like that. But it's some of the stuff that we uncovered. We keep saying, we know we're getting input from other
2003.
places. Where it's all coming from? Some of this may have came from,
Oh, there's where you got a third of it's coming from 3
Yeah.
Mile, thirds from the bottom, and a
Yeah.
thirds from the watershed.
we've also reached out today to Whitney King, who is the chemistry professor at Colby, who's driven a lot of this stuff. But he told Mary today that he's buried with doing Belgrade Lakes work right now. It's huge. But he's talking to us, so we're going to use him, at least through his department, see what he can do to at least get advice that we're going the right direction on stuff.
Okay. Any chance that he has students that might work on our project?
Mary spent probably 2 hours on the phone with her today, so.
Okay.
And he's an old colleague of mine, so we're going to put some pressure on him, see what we can come up with, so.
Maybe there's another person, he's overwhelmed, but maybe there's another professor that might.
Yeah, we're hinted at that, so.
That would be great. Because in the past, in China, like there had been, and when I looked at the 2005-15, that there had been some involvement, I think it was with that plan. Some of the research was done by St. Joseph's College down in Wyndham.
Yeah, Wyndham.
And so they had been involved in some of that. So I think getting, any university work or college workers involved really, I think, helps us a lot and keeps us fresh. And particularly if we could. All right, so anything else there? Weber Pond Water Quality Management Plan, so the question around that is that, so the other piece is that, so did the select board, were they in agreement with taking funds for the, from the Alewives in order to pay for some of the testing again this year?
Are we going down to another item 6?
No, it has to do with Weber Pond water quality.
I don't know.
Okay.
I do know that we used all the funds that were allocated to us last year.
Who's we?
We as Weber Pond Association.
Used
Yeah, good
all
right.
of Alewife funds?
No, the town gave Weber
All
Pond
of the-
Association $5,000.
Okay, they used all that, okay.
We used it all for everything from protecting the dam, to control stuff, some testing equipment, and then, which we just bought the last piece. And some of it we're getting from DEP. They're giving us old stuff that we can modify and things like that. So I've been to some of the training I spent half a day at DEP with Jim Webb and Mary Schwanke, and I was blown away about the amount of care they had of helping us do stuff, so.
So I thought that they talked about that they were going to look at doing that again this year, and it does have to go on a warrant, or it didn't?
Well, I can't, I looked at the warrants, I can't find anything on there about what the 5,000, I have no idea. But the select board said they approved it. That's why we're meeting with them on the 21st, is
Okay.
they want to know what'd you do with the money, and I'm going to say, here's what we did, but we also need more. So I haven't seen anything else. Aaron had taken that money, and had said, I can use some of the Alewife money because it is for production Alewifes. I mean, gate controls, all that kind of stuff, so.
Okay. Good. Well, it's exciting to hear all the stuff
Yeah.
that's going on, and it's a lot of work, and all the people who are involved in it are, who are not actually here, and not part of our group, are really
No.
stepping up to the plate, so. The number 4, the Project Canopy Grant.
We've started out by listening as part of the requirement, listening to their educational video Zoom meeting that they make as a requirement for applying for grants. Matt and I both have done that and paid attention. Since then, Matt has printed off some of the slides for us to go back and refresh our memory as we do the grant. There's actually 2 grants available. There's a Project Canopy, then there's another one that's through the...
Inflation Reduction Act,
That one, however, is only for low
disadvantaged communities.
disadvantaged communities. And the map, Vassalboro doesn't qualify.
Okay.
And what?
Vassalboro doesn't qualify. It's mostly Penobscot County, way down east mostly it looked like, and northern parts of the state. So the only grant we can apply for is the Project Canopy,
Okay.
which we'll go forward with.
And what is it that you already?
Street trees, more street
So
trees.
Have you designated an area
Yeah,
specific?
different areas. We've driven the roads and so forth.
So
We
you-
haven't locked them in as specific at this point. As part of the grant writing, we have to kind of obviously delineate exactly where they're going, reach out to homeowners.
And the new
so-
thing this year is they do allow for a public-private partnership, so you can offer it to homeowners. Obviously, they have to agree and things like that, but
What does that mean that because they always didn't they always have to agree to put it on like in front of their house?
It had to
But
be
when
a
it-
rate on it had to be in public property.
Oh, so
It
they
couldn't-
can actually put it on beyond the actual road, the,
You couldn't go beyond the right of way.
right, but now they can go beyond the right of way.
In certain instances, you have to actually have an agreement, a landowner agreement signed and so forth, so it's not something that you'd want to do on the whole thing. I don't think that they'd look too fond of doing that. One application I'm thinking of, reaching out to would be North Vassalboro. I know when the Alewife Main Rivers did fishways in North Vassalboro, where that pavilion's located along Route 32, there's a little turnout there, which technically I'm pretty certain is Ray Breton property. There was a thought process, they wanted to plant some trees along that little parking area that overlooked that water.
And maybe even on the other side of the property there, he owns that side too,
It's-
along where the dam, where the Alewife stuff is.
Right, it's still pretty treed in.
Oh, it
so,
is? Okay.
yeah. I'm thinking along where that parking area is, no
Right.
vegetation there currently. So
Yeah.
obviously for holding the bank and back and
Yeah, okay.
all the above environmental reasons to try and
That's a
find
perfect place.
6 or 8 trees might be.
Yeah, no, that's a perfect place, because people need shade there, although they get it from the pavilion, but it also, from
Yeah.
a conservation point of view, you want as many tree roots all over the place
Right.
there.
So that would be an agreement that
Okay.
I assume Ray, the landowner, would have to enter into.
When's the application due?
May 15th.
Oh,
So we have
wow.
much more time than last year. It was due like the end of March. Just what the webinar thing, it was just this past weekend, so was the
That's
first thing,
great.
so I have that.
Well, I was
You
getting
all
nervous
set.
about it, because at one point it was like February 15th, and it was like, holy, we had to decide in January if we were going to apply. I remember that was like, it was
Yeah.
scary. We had to throw it together.
So the difference too between the IRA one and the Project Canopy is the Project Canopy does require matching funds, but it can be in kind. Versus the IRA, it was 100%.
But we don't qualify.
We don't qualify.
So it's a 50-50 match?
50/50.
Same as prior.
It's just gonna be very similar to last year's grant, really,
And the 50% can be all in kind?
which is what we did last year too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. How are the trees doing from last year?
Good.
They all made it through this weird winter?
Yeah, so far, yep, yeah.
And they-
A couple of them got dinged with, doing earthwork and stuff, but not detrimental.
Okay, so you all are gonna put it together?
Yep.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, it should be pretty straightforward, hopefully. I mean, it's the same parameters as what we did before, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Are there any chances that if you get it one year, you don't get it another?
No.
Well, just that they put prioritizing, at least when I read the last one that we did, that they put priority towards people who haven't done it.
Right, that's what I was
But
thinking.
they do, but last year, I think they gave it to almost everybody who applied.
Okay.
So there's funds out there, and so as long as it's when there's not a lot of funds that they will prioritize.
yeah.
But right now, they've been really generous with, people applying, as long as it meets their criteria. The other thing it asked for is that there be involvement. And I know last year, it's just sort of like, how do we involve? Because I know that that's always a tricky, just like we've been dealing with this issue of how do you involve young people and other organizations. We said we were involving CRLA with the youth group to try to do some like maintenance during the summer, and
Does that really,
No, it's not.
This one
that's-
doesn't have
No, it's called letters of support, but it's really, the intention is, it's kind of confusing, but it's letters of support of someone supporting it. So like Steve giving his time in kind and writing a letter like we did last year, this is why he's supporting it. Things of that nature. Not really, we don't need like one from the Alewives or like we did last
we
year.
just need people, because they said, when we wrote it last year, they said that when we offered a couple of different people, to be supportive, and they said, we only want supportive letters from those people who are going to be actively volunteering or giving, sort of like the in-kind people. But-
So that's exactly what
And
it
so it would
be.
be.
Yep.
Is there anybody else who would be doing in-kind stuff besides Fieldstone?
When someone wants to donate.
Boy Scouts?
thing is it's just like this sign,
It's a lot of energy.
Yeah,
it's a
I know.
lot chasing.
I mean,
It
I
is, it
sit
is.
on a grant program at work, and less is more. They don't want to sit through and read a huge novel on what the plans are. They want it succinct to the point. You've met the criteria, check, check, check.
All right, sounds good. Is there anything that you need from us as far as, how much are we asking for? Is there like a maximum amount for this thing?
It's 15,000, but I don't think we're going, Steve, this is the
We just
infancy.
started, we drove some streets early on and just to see if there's a need,
Well,
see the need for
Well,
it.
with this last storm that we had, there
Yeah.
were some big trees that came down.
Yeah.
I wonder about the recreation field, that near where the swing sets are and stuff like that, that people are always looking for shade.
That can be, and I understand, the only thing is it can be very difficult, just like school playgrounds, because of soil compaction. Trees aren't fond of the soil compaction, it's, believe it or not, just feet
Uh-huh.
is constant. Trees suffer
Aye.
and actually decline because of the foot traffic. Yeah.
So if we had them in an area where it was almost like, not cordoned off, but sort of like visually cordoned off.
Behind is where there's not a lot of foot
Yeah,
traffic.
or sort of like having some kind of like rocky sort of edge, sort of like it's a garden, you know, so that, you know, okay, within this garden space, you know,
Yep.
people aren't as likely to be climbing on them or walking around them or
Yep.
something.
Yeah.
And some of the option, replacement tree program, you know, as existing street trees age and present risks to or suffer from the ravages of invasive pests and diseases, trees can be replaced with grant program funding. Business district enhancement, which I think kind of would be
Pretty much,
North Vassalboro.
right.
That's, I guess.
Because some of the other grants, I've
Yeah.
divvied them up amongst the villages. And geez, I think one of them was 12 or 15 trees. You wouldn't know it today, but there was, you know, if you drove the street, there's that many trees that were added.
How much is each tree generally?
Cost?
Yeah.
Yeah, the tree itself probably is, depend on the size, you know, 2.5 inch caliper, you're looking at 500.
Okay.
Yeah, it could be 5 to 6.
Mhm.
Yeah, the tree itself.
Some other options too, buffer plantings, trees naturally filter air and water, limit storm runoff, like you were saying, Holly. And then improve community health and quality of life. Plant trees in visible areas, contiguous locations where they make a direct positive impact on the community.
What about down by the boat landing in,
Well, I'm not sure financials.
Yeah.
anything else about Project Canopy per se?
No.
Okay, so you guys are writing it up, thank you very much. Appreciate you doing that, and,
Wasn't there something you wanted to mention?
oh, I know, the tree that's just, this might be for next year, but you know how we had a lot of trees, these maple trees keep dying along the side of the road, and the meeting had these huge maple trees, and then we put in maple trees, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, and those things started to die, and our last one is actually dying, the one that we tried to save right by the parking lot, and that one's dying.
Huh.
The ones that we put in since then, we put in the
catalpas.
catalpa,
Yeah.
and there's a cranberry, I don't know, I don't think that came from Project Canopy, I think that was something that
Is it,
somebody at the meeting put in.
is it crabapple?
Yeah.
You mean? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Did
there.
I say cranberry?
Yeah. That was there before, yeah.
Okay.
Because I remember when we put the catalpas in, we were trying
We're
to,
probably gonna need one to fill in the one that is dying.
okay.
Right, and it's on the downhill side of that. I think we tried to save it, but it looks like it's not gonna make it.
It's not, yeah,
It didn't do any better last year.
almost looks like road compaction and also road salt.
You guys parking around it near it? Cars?
Right now, it's a mud pit, so,
I mean, during the summer months?
yeah, right, we
Yeah, some
are.
people park-
Could be
That's the
soil-
problem.
Could be soil
Compaction,
soil
yeah.
compaction, yeah.
Because
It's not
typical, a
salt,
lot of
because
times,
it
people
slopes.
parking there will actually, instead of backing up, will drive over.
Yeah, I've done that.
Oh, I do too. Just
So soil
feeling really
compaction,
guilty
so-
right now thinking about that.
Okay,
It's not
so-
salt, because you got a nice
Yeah.
drain swell there,
No,
and
it's
plus
not
it
it.
slopes away, so.
Okay, soil compression, we're gonna have to talk about that.
Those trees, I think, were put in back in the day when Herman Massey was around. There's 3 or 4
They're,
guys.
they're old, yeah,
That
they're
was
not
on it.
old, but they're not
They're
that old.
beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so next is the cemetery trees removal.
You know, of course, recently, the Methodist cemetery lost some trees due to some removals. It's still unclear. The street trees that were planted via grant money from 25, 30 years ago, how those got taken out, whether it was deemed oversight or how that looked upon, I'm not quite sure. Whether those trees can go back in if it was an oversight issue or what the status is of that.
They took them out of Cross Hill, and I asked at that time why'd they take them. They said that the cemetery committee had the authority to take them out on all the cemeteries. They're coming out on all the cemeteries because of the potential for damage on the
There's some,
things, and I think it's just,
from what David's saying, in regards to an email that he sent out, that one, those were outside of the cemetery parameters, so there's quite a gray area.
they're in the right of way, they're in the road right
No,
of way?
what the cemetery classifies, how does David write this?
Yeah, I saw that, but the town took them out.
Correct, but is
What
it
part of Cross Hill?
over here in the Methodist cemetery?
All the
okay.
ones in the front of Cross
Oh,
Hill,
yeah.
the cemetery, those all
Oh,
came
yeah,
down
yeah,
last
those
year.
right, yeah.
Those came down last year,
Right.
or the year
And I
before.
think,
The
I
year
mean, I
before,
kinda wanna
actually.
get the street trees kinda settled first before I kinda went on to the next concern. He goes, and I'm not sure if you people picked up on it, in
Yeah.
regards to the bolding of the letters of within and outside, that's
yeah.
kinda consistent.
This is from the cemetery, he's on the cemetery committee, so
Correct.
can you read the parts that were pertinent about why the cemetery, what the cemetery committee had decided?
So is your concern that those trees were planted using grant money?
Yes, that, and whether they can go back in, if it's an oversight, that
You
somebody.
mean, what do you mean by whether they can go back in, plant new ones?
Correct. Today, as you drive by there, it's not a pretty sight.
Well, the ones on Cross Hill isn't
Yeah.
either, I mean,
So-
they're just right up against the
And
road
I want to
now.
address that too, after we kind of trees in other cemeteries. I've been driving around looking at other
Yeah,
cemeteries.
they've been taking them down everywhere.
I have here, so here's what I've got from
I believe
cemetery. We had $13,000, because this is what I had seen in there. There's $13,000 in the budget for tree cutting. The cemetery committee agreed to finish cutting all trees in Maple Grove. That's
Cross Hill?
that's Cross Hill, I think. Where's
No,
Maple
I
Grove?
don't think Maple Grove is Cross Hill.
Huh.
Maple Grove
No,
is,
it's going toward Oak Grove.
oh, on the left,
On
if
the
you're
left.
going from Riverside.
Yeah.
It's the one on
okay,
the
Oh,
that's
no,
left.
yeah,
Maple.
right. so
Is that
Riverside.
Maple Grove?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
okay.
right.
So they agreed to finish cutting all trees in Maple Grove, and then if there's money to move on to, this is the, these are from the minutes of the cemetery committee. Then if there's money to move on to the Methodist, period, Savannah will get in touch with Aaron to have Public Works find a company to do this work. And so,
I know I'm just a fly in the wall, but if you go back to the annual report last year, they specify dangerous trees. So if you follow that thread along.
Well, a dangerous tree is probably anything that can fall over and hit a gravestone. Which
That's
is
what they were
basically
talking
anything
about.
in the tree, in a cemetery.
Right.
It's subject to interpretation. For me,
Right.
dangerous tree means a tree that is
Leaning,
ill, that likely branches are going to fall off, not a healthy tree.
yeah.
So
No,
what-
the ones in Cross Hill, they just mowed them all down. All of them in the front, they just took them all down. So, and they did the same with Methodist.
well, when they presented it, I don't know if it was at the town meeting or where they presented this about what trees they were gonna take down, but they did talk about it, and they said that they put in a fair amount of money into repairing
Gravestones.
gravestones, because trees had fallen on them. And so, and the other problem they were having was that there were roots that were starting to damage, I don't know, were creating a problem also. And so they wanted to take out those trees that were potentially going to fall on the gravestone areas. And that's what they got this $13,000, I guess, budgeted to do. There is a sort of a problem here in terms, I went back and looked at what is our, the Conservation Commission, we are listed by the state as being we are sort of the wardens of the trees. We're supposed to be overseeing the trees. And so it seemed, this is one of those silo issues, I think, where one group, they got the permission to have the money to do this sort of thing, and they got kind of permission to do that, but on the other hand, there wasn't kind of like a pass-through with the group, the Conservation Commission, that it should pass through first. And this is one of those things of just this is the communication problem that we run into all the time, right? And so and so the question now is, what you're bringing up is sort of like, before we go putting more trees in there, we want to know why those particular trees that were along the road, within the roadway, right?
Wasn't brought up for some type of discussion.
Right.
And I just want to read, this. I found where David's mentions, I believe the trees that Steve is referring to are trees that are outside, bolded, of the Methodist cemetery along Bog Road. Some, if not all, have been planted by Project Canopy. They were. The cemetery committee is and was not involved, underscore, in the decision to cut these trees. The authorization to cut down the trees outside, underscore, of the cemetery along Bog Road that I believe Steve is concerned about was made by the Public Works team. I believe, bolded, with the approval of the town manager.
Okay, so
So that sounds like an oops.
Correct, and it should, if it's an oops, then people should say whoops,
Oops.
then
And
move
let's-
forward
and
and we
let's
plant
replant
some more
the
trees. And I'm
Okay.
fine with that.
Right.
But I think that needs to be clarified, and if there's a whoops, it needs to be
can you
said.
put this in the minutes, please?
Well, I'm not sure what to put in at this point.
Whoops.
I mean, I'm still waiting for a final discussion so that I'll know what to
There's
put
no
in.
final
Where's-
discussion, this is
right over here,
information
right?
gathering. So what we need to put in here is, it
They
needs
took
to
down a hell of a
be,
lot of trees.
Right,
When I
within,
drove-
within, and then technically there's 2 live trees, the 2 ash. The next tree down technically was kind of it was an elm tree that had died, but it had come to the town back when Mike Roy was a town manager. It has some history. It came from the Rotary out of Waterville. Mike Roy called me up, he says, I've got 5 bare root elm trees in the town office. Is it that the Rotary just gave to us because they were some historical significance that the Rotary had planted and grown up from a seedling? Can you find 5 locations for these trees? So those elms, technically had died, I mean, had some historical significance to that fact. So that did get, that did get cut down, which it should have been cut down for safety purposes. Then there was another elm tree that had died, and I took it upon myself and donated the tree and put in a horse chestnut some years ago when that died. I actually personally cut it down myself.
and was a horse chestnut cut down?
No, it was another elm tree that had died, and I personally cut it down myself and personally donated a horse chestnut. And that did make it, that by the time, that did not get cut.
And that's the one, this
That's,
was still
that's the
talking on-
last tree to the west.
And we're still talking about on the Methodist?
Yep, the same location that we started out with in the discussion.
So how many trees were cut down from Project Canopy, do you think?
2.
2, okay.
And I say I'm fine with if somebody antes up and acknowledges it, and we move forward and we get the trees put back in, but I'm not gonna go, promoting that they get planted if somebody's gonna come back through and say, whoops, we're gonna cut them back down again.
So it sounds like, so we need to put that there were 2 trees that were part of a Project Canopy program were probably accidentally cut down.
From what David's saying, yes.
Yeah, probably
accidentally.
accidentally cut down, as it was not the trees that the cemetery committee had been recommending be taken down because they were outside of the cemetery land or whatever.
Yeah, he just
And
goes.
so that's what we know so far.
Mhm.
And so the action would be that we need to meet with Aaron and talk and just say, it looks as if this was a mistake. Is there something we don't know about that we should know about? Number 1. Number 2, that any trees that are going to be cut down by the town or by the town, that it should go through the Conservation Commission because we are the wardens of the trees by state statutes or whatever it's called. And so those are the 2 things that we'll probably be recommending. Does that sound right? Are we in agreement with that? Okay.
So when were those Project Canopy trees planted?
And would they be replaced by the town, not another Canopy Grant? They'd have to be replaced by the town, yeah.
Well, just generally, it's not a really good luck when you go around cutting down Project Canopy trees
Right.
and then now
It's not
applying,
going to look good.
now applying for more Project Canopy money.
Right.
It's like, what are
And
we
they will
doing?
ask for that too. They will, I seem to remember that they had some kind of thing in that grant, at least last year, they had something where it said, have you had Project Canopies and what happened to them?
Well, part of it's the maintenance program.
Right, and so they do ask that question, so that'll be very important to, okay, so we also need to mention that we are applying for another, so that should actually go in the budget, shouldn't it, for next year?
That would get taken out of the cemetery budget.
But the cemetery, in
Didn't
that
authorize
case,
it.
did not
They didn't
authorize it.
authorize
But
it.
if you're looking for money,
Right,
Public Works.
yeah, public work.
Now that the Alewife should pay for it. No.
come out of their road, their paving. They had extra in their paving budget this year. Anyway, it's not for us to decide that, it's
Right.
just to say that in applying for the Project Canopy Grant, so we want to find out, 2 trees were,
Maybe we should reiterate, the Conservation Committee is fine with tree removal of dangerous trees that pose a threat or
Oh,
liability.
That's true.
Who defines dangerous and evaluates?
dangerous to humans
And
as
property.
opposed to stones.
Or just a liability, or they're dead, diseased, whatever, just so they don't think we don't want any tree cut down ever.
Then, I guess we've kind of settled that part of it, of the equation. And
Okay.
I guess the other part of the equation, I guess, wasn't really fully aware of, not seeing the cemetery that got clear cut up on Cross Hill Road that you've mentioned.
And I saw one on the way home tonight.
Yeah, that.
Another cemetery that was cut?
That's being cut. I didn't realize, I guess not paying attention, when the cemetery approved it, whether it came through town meeting or however that got approved, of them removing all trees within the boundaries of a cemetery.
According to David, the cemetery committee has the authority to do that.
Hmm.
That's what
I
I
guess-
kind of got the impression, and, when it happened, I asked, and I was basically told,
'Cause if
oh,
you-
well.
If you drive the Oak Grove Road and look at, I think it's called the Nicholas Cemetery, if they do what they've done so far,
It'll kill it.
it-
It's a beautiful
it's,
spot.
It is.
it's amazing.
Well,
It's-
cemeteries are have some of the oldest vegetation, because they are.
Cemeteries are classified in different areas as arboretums.
Yep.
In different areas, I've gone, traveled to cemeteries just to see the
Yeah.
plantings.
And
I don't,
the other thing is, when people go to cemeteries, they kind of like to sit under a tree
Exactly.
instead of baking out in the sun.
some of those monies that are being used to clear cut them, if some of those monies were probably appropriated for maintenance or taking down hazardous trees, pruning appropriate dead wood and so forth out of trees, and doing classified general maintenance would probably be more applicable than just the clear cut historic
Yeah, because those are
cemeteries.
usually really old trees.
They're historic.
Sounds like we need to meet with them tomorrow.
But I think.
I mean, if they're doing it all,
Well, I think from what David said, I think they've maybe used up to $13,000 in budget. And that's the other thing, cost, but, because he said that they started out at Maple Grove, then went on to Methodist. Then if there's money to move on to the Methodist cemetery, they must have had a little bit more, because Matt saw him on River Pond Road over by the old Riverside School.
I didn't see him in there, but I looked quickly, and I could see trees that were gone. And
Okay, you
there's-
didn't see him in there today?
No.
Okay,
I mean, you can
so-
just tell it's been,
Oh, yeah, I drove over there this afternoon.
That's Maple Grove, isn't it?
Is that Maple Grove by the Riverside?
Yeah, I don't know where Maple Grove
See,
is.
it doesn't really give Maple Grove. 13,000 was budgeted. We finished up all the trees at Maple Grove. If they go back, I wanted to see what was left in Maple Grove. There is and I took a picture. There's one line, it's within what is the boundary line, looks like, of the cemetery. There's some historic maples.
That's a pretty, it's very densely wooded.
Historic. They've taken down some trees, and I don't know what the condition was of those trees they removed already. But, like, I think, myself, probably I'll join the cemetery board. And I'm rallying around for that. If it takes me to join a board to save these historic cemeteries and see some of the rationale. I
I was
get the
upset
danger.
on Cross Hill, because
I-
that was right in front of my parents.
I get the danger and all the other criteria that goes with this,
That
but
used to be
to
very
clear,
wooded.
to clear cut these cemeteries,
just-
I just don't get
Yeah,
it.
which is what happened at Cross Hill, because it was,
There were 4 of them. There were 4 or 5 trees right there, and
they're gone.
They're all
yeah.
gone.
So
Yeah.
it's like being in the middle of the hayfield for one of Joe Suga's fields.
Right, it
it
just
broke
so
my heart.
It's
Beautiful
sad.
trees, they were
It's-
gorgeous trees.
It's,
and it's just, so I think that the idea, even if it's for maintenance stuff, I think that it would be good for them to consult with the Conservation Commission, because like you said, it's like, how does a person decide, oh, it looks diseased, so let's cut the whole thing down, or it looks as if it's just a matter of taking these few dead branches down the tree itself. That's something that's not something that I don't think that, I mean, not that we have, I mean, we happen to have experts on our conservation, but we might not always have it, but at least it goes through and we can say, let's get an opinion at least. Or, yeah, that's obviously needs to come down.
Correct.
I used to worry about, because sometimes I thought, when Gene, they, all across Hill Road, they took out some really beautiful drives through there. And Gene said, well, we have to because there's safety issues and plows and stuff. I'm thinking,
What does that mean, safety issues and plows?
well, the plow trucks, the trees were close to the road, the side of the road and all that stuff. So we used to call it, I can't remember what our kids call it, but the haunted forest kind of thing. It was really dense. And he pulled it back, they pulled it back, you know, probably 30, 40 feet in some cases. So that whole area was so quaint, was just now a road with a few trees
So
on it.
this has been sort of going on maybe for
A
on
long
and
time,
off. So I think
yeah.
that maybe it's time to start to make a recommendation about that for these kinds of things, which, and now we're running out of time for the last issue.
And
Yeah,
some
I
of
That's
these,
sort of the same issue that came up with this planning board thing of the, that thing that,
some of these trees, canopied roads and so forth, actually acts as a calming device for traffic control, for speed. You go slower because it's not a freeway.
Oh, yeah.
You go more cautious. So indirectly, it's a speed control device as well.
Now, I did put in here that it was noted that VCC is authorized by the state as the wardens of town trees, and actions to remove trees should be discussed and consulted with VCC in the future. Should we make a better recommendation, a more direct recommendation? Or is it just to note that and that we'll work with the cemeteries?
but I think that sounds okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you want something a little more action item. Okay.
All right, so can we briefly address the last issue?
Yeah, because I gotta get out of here.
It's the, oh, wait a minute, actually, there was a seventh one, but I didn't put in here, but the recommended Alewife income go to the watershed projects. David had suggested that, and we talked about this over the past year or two. Is there any discussion about, this was where,
There's,
There
what
is
that's
nothing-
for is matching, because there has to be matching funds to do the 605. You have to have, it's a 1-to-1 match. So I think it's 1-to-1. But my understanding, what David was after, what they were recommending, is they take some Alewife funds to use as the match to do those.
David Jenny?
Yeah.
The match for the watershed plan?
Yeah.
So it's not a watershed project, it's the actual
No,
watershed
plan, yeah.
plan.
I'm only, right now, I'm just trying to get the plan off the ground. I mean, the 319 is important, but I think that's where it was coming, what his idea was how to fund that watershed plan.
With some of the,
Yeah.
well, we can recommend it. Do we do it, does anybody want to have any discussion about that?
Seems like it's well, either no discussion or a bigger discussion than we have time for, other than if we don't suggest the Alewife funds, where are the funds gonna come from?
Don't go before the town, before
The
the,
town meeting?
Town meeting.
But does the town have to approve Alewife funds?
no. No.
So
My
wouldn't you
understanding
think,
from
but I
Aaron
would
is-
think the town already is
Select
aware of
board
this,
does.
and they're gonna, if they know that they have to pay for the watershed plan 50/50,
There are people that that would object to spending money for anything. We have, it directly affects the Alewives.
the only thing I'm just being a devil's advocate is, to me, it's a no-brainer. Why do we need to recommend to use the Alewife money? It's a no-brainer. Why aren't
Oh,
we
yeah.
using the Alewife money for?
It's
I mean, why do we have to recommend it?
Advocates, I guess, is what we're being advocates. It's, I think, essentially what.
And you don't think the town manager would have figured this out himself, that we should be using the Alewife money for the plan?
Aaron knows how much money he's got, because I've talked to him, because we know that there's money that he's using, that he's pledged for the Alewife, any of the projects that he's figured, he's got it in his head how much money he can allocate, even to the Main Rivers match and stuff like that, which is probably 2 years out, but.
So I guess Peggy's point is that, so do we really need to make any recommendation if it's really basically, it's the town manager's kind of figures out, he makes recommendations about where the money's
He
gonna
makes
come
it
from.
to the
once-
select board, so the only thing would be that we concur with his decision to go to, and the select board approve it.
Okay.
Not that we have any actual legal say in it, but I think saying we concur that he should. It's a little squishy to me, and particularly when Mary left and we didn't have any idea how much money was there.
So it has to do with the matching funds for the,
Yeah.
for the plan,
Right.
be able to be taken from that. Is that good enough?
Yeah, I
And
mean,
the last thing had to do with, that I didn't get on here because it just came up, was that,
Hedge of trees.
the hedges and the trees. Because I just read so there was was reading the planning board minutes. So this is the problem of sort of like not knowing everybody what's going on, but there's somebody had recommended, well, before the planning board, somebody had come who had a small lot on the Weber Pond, and they wanted to, they among other things, one of the things they wanted to do is to take out, they have 3 rows of a hedge row, they called it, and they wanted to take those out. And in the planning board's minutes, it said, basically that they thought it was a CEO, and Paul weighed in on this too. He says it's a CEO decision because it's shrubbery. It's not, that goes to removing landscaping or I can't remember how it goes in the board.
There's
Shoreline
no,
zoning.
allowance to remove them, but not do any replanting to go back in. No criteria, nothing
didn't
attached
say
to the
anything.
permit, nothing of any significance that
They didn't-
made them to go put any vegetation
They said it wasn't
back.
a planning board issue. It had to go, it was a CEO issue.
That's
So it's going
what
to
Paul
this.
was shoving it off to say it's a code enforcement
Enforcement
issue. But-
Shoreline zoning code.
But typically, a lot of permits are issued with attachments and restrictions that say, if you do this, you have to abide by this.
So that would be a CEO permit? You would
It'd be
doing?
attachment to the permit, or a criteria of the permit.
But who's giving the permit out?
The
The
planning
CEO.
board,
Oh,
or part of the planning board
Yeah, right.
approval.
Yeah.
The
well,
planning
I don't know
board-
if you read, what's her name's response.
Peggy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Not Peggy,
Jenny, her
Jenny,
name was Jenny.
Jenny Bracken.
Jenny.
Jenny.
Yeah.
See, you got me when I walked in, I'm thinking it was Peggy
I was
sitting
like-
there tonight.
it's like-
It
I
was
mean,
like,
she said that evidently there is not any land there to put anything on. It's-
But there's
taking
still,
it-
if there's land for a building, there's land for something. Then there's mulching
So-
or ground cover. There's other vegetation that can happen.
Sounded like they had that sort of covered. I mean, I'm not an expert.
Yeah.
I would say it's not our issue, but it's not a tree.
But it technically is our issue because here we are coming back to
The
Oh,
this.
yeah, right.
phosphorus was-
Well,
This is what, this becomes our
Right,
issue.
Right,
It's called full circle.
Right.
yeah.
It's our issue also, the same as the cemetery. We should be consulted at the planning board level a lot more than we are.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that is also, if the state says we're wardens of the trees, the state says we're also, our responsibility is to help with planning to make sure that sensitive areas are not being,
So this was on Weber
Destroyed.
Pond?
Yeah.
Water pond.
yeah.
They could have,
So-
so we've got, part of the Lake Smart program, they could have,
No,
But
this
they're
is-
not putting thany restrictions that this person they're gonna issue the permit, which I assume they did tonight.
No,
With-
oh, yeah, we don't know what they're gonna do tonight. I
Correct.
just-
With no criteria or attachments that they have to do anything. And just, it sounded like to me.
yeah.
They were gonna pull out 3 rows, 3 hedgerows.
That's a lot of filtration.
It was like 30 feet. One of the hedgerows was 30 feet by 4 feet.
Correct.
And so that's a lot. And
That's some square
between-
footage
Yeah,
that
it
they
would.
say doesn't exist. It does there.
It's- Right, it's like, there is room. I don't
Mhm.
think she said that didn't exist. I think she just said that it wasn't,
Was a tight lot.
it was a tight lot.
Yeah.
But there can be, they can do replacement stuff that's not.
I mean, in my travels going around lakes, it is amazing. the raw soil that we see.
Oh, yeah.
It
It's
is,
worse right now.
all these rains, exactly,
Yeah.
these rains, 2-inch rains, it's,
That's why we had,
It's
that's
gone.
why the lakes are
There's
brown,
blooms.
including China Lake was brown.
there's huge plumes, it's
Yeah.
crazy. To not say that they've got to put any vegetation in it,
And it
Yeah, I
can't
don't-
be grass.
I'm not sure what I'm doing for notes here. I don't even know what the
Hmm.
topic is.
We're
The
talking
topic
about
is-
removing head.
I know, but is it the planning board?
The planning board approved, or they.
I know, but what's the topic? Planning, discussions with planning board permits,
vegetation removal for permitting. And if they can't see that, I mean, they've got to understand it's a direct correlation.
Has a camp with China anyway. He's the one that really wants to push for phosphorus control.
It's an application to the planning board.
okay, I think I got it for now.
Okay.
The library card?
Yeah,
What? So, oh yes. No, we were trying to figure out because there are people in planning board who are very concerned with the phosphorus, and that is a direct phosphorus control issue.
so I'm not sure what,
He had a buffer strip installed last year on China through the Conservation Corps. Doug did. We supplied the plant material for it. For the Conservation
Lake
Corps.
Smart, yeah.
Yeah, so the Conservation Corps.
oh, you're talking about the one that he did do. So there is,
Yeah, I don't understand why they would give that thing directly to the CEO to make the decision.
this was all, so if you need to look at it for
Yeah,
your minutes, did you see the thing I sent out?
I did.
Okay, so it's in there,
Yeah, I know what we're talking about. I didn't know what the topic.
but it might give you
Yeah.
some,
Plant material because the
Yeah,
permitting requires it to happen because of additions or whatever.
it said there was no room for trees to be planted on the site.
but there's other stuff better than trees right now to use.
Correct. Actually, it does better root.
Yeah.
Mass.
It says there's been discussion about revising the ordinance to include rain gardens or some similar for impervious surfaces. I think that it would be good to, I mean, we have a representative on the planning board. And so it may be good to have the conversation with our representative on the planning board.
But he kind of already said though, it wasn't necessary.
Where do we go from here?
I don't know, sit down with the planning board.
You know, they asked me to come and I talked to them, it's been maybe a year, about the phosphorus, doing work on the phosphorus ordinance. And because China's got one, but it's not very effective. So, but the way we can make it effective is somewhere around the line is like this kind of decision that if you take out something that's actually working, well, we don't assume it depends what the plan, that it'd be replaced with. It doesn't have to be,
Trees.
trees, and it doesn't have to be 4 feet high.
Mm-mm.
All it has to do is have the right kind of root system,
structure, right.
root structure, and grass doesn't cut it.
Mm-mm.
Oh,
And I understand part of that conversation that Ginny had was that it was up against the structure and rotting the building out. They need, for breathing and so forth, which is fine, but that can go bye-bye. And you can also add something else that works.
better job, yeah.
Correct. Maybe it's, ground cover that might grow.
So where do you think we need to take this? You said talking with the planning board, basically with the,
Maybe have a roundtable discussion with
I
them.
agree, because that's what I've been trying to get.
Separate,
Everybody-
I ended it with VCC recommends that the planning board discuss and consult with VCC in situations like this, but maybe it's even a little bit more. That, VCC recommends that the planning board meet with VCC on better.
Brainstorming.
on phosphorus control or things like that.
To phosphorus
Exactly, it's full circle.
and,
Phosphorus control issues.
yeah.
But
And there's people like Linda Bacon, who's a state limnologist. It's whatever the lake biologist is called.
okay.
And she's good at helping and that's the person we work with. She's the state limnologist.
Mhm.
So, and she's really approachable about doing, like working and having I think it's great.
To have a round table discussion with an expert there.
Board, yeah.
Right? Bring
Expert
somebody
there. And also have the CEO would be there anyways, but there's a big learning thing that we're just finding, we're learning every day. We discover stuff. So
So I'm going to say that the action is going to be that we're going to recommend that there's some kind of roundtable discussion with planning board, an expert, maybe from, she's DEP, is she?
Yeah, yeah,
Like Linda Bacon and the VCC to discuss how phosphorus control for our watersheds. Because this is, I mean, they were responsible, yeah. So it seems like that would be,
that also.
because that will
fits
also
what-
fit into the
what we had
plan.
to do. Yeah,
Because it will fit into the whole watershed plan to
Mhm.
start to work with our planning board
Yep.
piece on what can be done and what can't be done.
right.
Mhm.
All right. Thank you guys for staying on here a little bit. And so I don't know exactly where we're going to be meeting next.